Good morning. I've heard on the media that Bernie's back, and he's advocating, of course, one of his long-term interests, single payer. We know it's kind of silly to listen to what he advocates. He's totally disqualified. 60%, of course, of the American public like him and respect him, but he's really not qualified to comment. He's too honest, too decent. Why would we want to listen to an honest, decent person who has thought about things for a long time, investigated them, has the common person, the common man, the common woman, the common anybody in his sights? He wants to do the right thing. I understand that totally disqualifies him. But let's go into an alternate universe in which honest, decent people actually have a chance. And look at this single payer thing and what the alternatives are and why we should go with it. Number one, we have one. It's called Medicare, and it's used in people over 65, which is the most complicated group to work with. They have all kinds of things. They go in and out of the hospital. You have problems with communication. This is much more difficult than somebody who comes in with a sore throat or a pneumonia in the youth, and you can take care of it. So the basic sense of that is something you really have to understand. Now, what is insurance about? Insurance is that you have a risk of some kind. It's a risk. And you get that risk spread out into a large population so that if something bad happens, like a fire, you can get recompense for that and you can handle it. And everybody contributes to that. We all have fire insurance, or the guy who handles our mortgage won't handle a mortgage. You've got to have that spread out. And the best way is that it is truly spread out. And the best way that it's spread out to everybody. It's spread out to the young, the old, the rich, the poor, the people who are smart enough to figure out what to do, and the people who have to sort of be led along. And you have to treat everybody decently, and you don't differentiate between one person or another. So the basic logic of insurance is to cover a large group of people and to cover them without a lot of complications. They're just there and you take care of them. I'm coming up for words, trying to, the situation is so weird that just trying to get simple common sense across is very difficult. There are things that stand in the way of this. One of them is the new God, the overarching God, the bottom line. If you can come up with some way of saving some money for some group that's involved financially, that's the benefit of it. This bottom line has got to be eliminated. You have to look at everything that's going on when you're figuring out policy. Okay, what does having a single payer policy, why is that better than the bizarre policy that we have with the Affordable Care Act, which incidentally, as I mentioned before, was a scheme on the basis of the Heritage Foundation, very honestly put out to avoid single payer. And you can call it Heritage Care, Romney Care. You should not call it Obamacare. This is not the guy that originated it. Neither was Nancy Pelosi the one who originated it. This was started by the Heritage Foundation expressly to avoid single payer. Well, it's basically a failure. We have people who don't know if they're covered. We have all kinds of side effects. If you look at any big box company, you'll see that in the last few years, there's been this tremendous growth of part-time employees. Why is that good for the big box company? Well, they look at their bottom line. They see that if they have somebody on for 20 hours a week, they don't have to cover them legally. They do not have to cover them for medical insurance. But if they have, let's say, if they have them on for 20 hours a week, if another company has them on for 20 hours a week or 15 hours a week, together the employee has the hours that they need. They're exhausted, they're going back and forth, time is not their own, and they do not get insurance. Now, this is a terrible side effect. It's just one of the many side effects that come up. It's not planned for, but this is what happens. The path of single payer is the way to go. It's complicated as hell, but it has been worked out over a period of many years. When the original plans came out with Medicare, I looked at it, and I looked at it again and looked at it again, and there were things about it that as a physician, I said, this can't possibly work. This can't possibly work. One was a thing that instead of the hospital charging for services from day to day, they got a lump sum according to the diagnosis. I was bothered as hell when this happened. I said, how can you do it? It's not, you can't do it. There's be fights about the diagnosis that's used. We'll have all kinds of complications, etc., etc. I did not expect it to work. Surprisingly, years and years of looking at it, coming up with methods of choosing the category, coming up with adjustments to make the payment fair, coming up with adjustments to optimize how long the patient was going to be in the hospital. You didn't want to have a big open length of time, and you didn't want to be kicking them out when they really didn't need to. Well, surprisingly, and I really am surprised, the damn thing has worked. And we are talking about changing to this that has proved that it has worked. I'm going to talk about this more at the next session and give some idea of how and why we should go on from here, and to explain about why Medicare for all is the way to go. See you then.